Hey, what's going on everyone? This is iReviews back with another video, and today we're talking about one of the most important things when it comes to the daily use of your iPhone, and that's battery life. In this video, I will show you guys more than 30 tips and tricks that will help you get better battery life on your iPhone running on iOS 16. And we're starting with the lock screen. You know that with iOS 16, we have now the new lock screen widgets. They're cool and all that, but just keep in mind that you have to actually disable ones that you don't use. Don't keep a lot of them enabled if you don't actually need them, because of course they won't consume a ton of battery, but they will still consume some amount of battery, so just make sure you always keep on the ones that you need. Next up, we're talking about vibrations, which is a really huge thing when it comes to battery life. Vibration, actually the haptic engine, will consume a ton of battery. And with iOS 16, we have a new feature right here under sounds and haptics. If you go to keyboard feedback, you will have now haptic. Now this will enable a vibration on the keyboard when you press the keys. It's kind of cool. I really try to keep it on most of the time. I do actually keep it on most of the time because I really like that feedback, but it will probably have a negative impact on the battery life. So if you don't really like it that much, make sure you go ahead and disable it. Next up is another new feature on iOS 16, and that's announcing notifications through the speaker. That can be enabled by going under accessibility and then go to Siri right here. You will have announce notifications on speaker. If you don't actually really need this, make sure you have this disabled, or at least if you have it enabled, make sure that you go ahead and disable it for most of the apps and just keep on the ones that you really need. Of course, when it comes to having better battery life on your iPhone, one of the best things you can do is make sure that you have optimized battery charging turned on all the time. That can be done by going under the battery section, health and charging, and then make sure you have enabled right here optimized battery charging for your iPhone. Now this won't impact the daily battery life of your iPhone, but on the long run you will have a much better battery health on your iPhone. That way, of course, you will have way better battery life. A really simple thing, but that will have a huge impact, is making sure that you have your iPhone updated all the time. I see a lot of people keep their iPhone on really old iOS versions. Make sure that you update your device. Simply head on to General, Software Update, and make sure that you have the latest iOS version enabled or actually installed on your device. Now when it comes to updating, I would suggest that you don't install betas on your device. As you can see right here, I have 16.1, which is currently on beta 1, but I don't suggest everyday users to do this, especially the first couple of betas of an iOS versions. I wouldn't suggest you to install it because it's a beta. Of course, it's meant for devs to test it, and it will probably have a negative impact on the battery life of your iPhone. Now we talked about lock screen widgets. Make sure that you also check the home screen widgets of your iPhone. Don't keep their widgets that you don't actually need. Now this right here, I have this battery percentage widget, which I have kept here since iOS 14 has been released, but it's time to remove it now because of course we have the battery on the status bar, so I don't need it anymore. So make sure that you only keep the widgets that you actually need. Next up, make sure you go to settings, go under battery, and just down below here you will find all the apps that are using your iPhone's battery. And what you can do here is tap on show activity, and you can check here which apps are using more battery. Now there are apps, of course, that use more, they will of course consume more battery, but you might find here apps that you don't actually use a lot and are still consuming a lot of battery. What you should do, make sure to go ahead and delete them if you can, and of course try to replace them with a replacement with another app from the App Store. Now when it comes to apps, another thing you should do in order to have better battery life on your iPhone is make sure that you have your apps updated. Head on to the App Store and make sure you always have your apps updated. Most apps, especially new releases, will have bugs, and they're always releasing new versions to try to fix those bugs, which a lot of them might have an impact and will have an impact on the battery of your iPhone. So make sure that you always have your apps updated. If you don't want to bother with that, you can go under the settings app, go to the App Store here, and make sure that you have enabled here auto updates. That way your apps will be updated automatically. Now when it comes to apps, one thing you should not do is close apps from the app switcher. Now this is an old thing. A lot of people think that closing apps will save battery. Actually, it will do the opposite. Closing apps from the app switcher will just consume way more battery on your iPhone. Now right here I have these two apps on the app switcher. They're in the background ready to go. Anytime I want to open them, you can see right there, here I have the app ready to be opened and be used. But if I just close that, it would have to restart the app from the beginning. That way it will consume more CPU power and of course more battery as well. Now there are actually some really simple things that will have a huge impact on the battery life. One of them is dark mode. If you have a device with an OLED display, then dark mode is the way to go. Try to use it as much as possible, because on an OLED display, all the pixels that are black, like in this case, this really dark field right here, those are pixels of the screen that are completely turned off. That way it saves a ton of battery, so make sure you use dark mode as much as possible. Under settings, if you go to display and brightness, right here you will find Rise to Wake. Now Rise to Wake is a feature that will actually wake up the screen of your iPhone whenever you rise it up from a table or maybe pick it out of your pocket. But this will consume battery because it's all the time just sensing the movement of the iPhone in order to turn on the screen. If you don't really need this feature, make sure you go ahead and turn it off. Moving under accessibility, right here you can find some really cool settings and of course some really cool features, but most of them you probably aren't using daily and probably don't need even that much. First of them, go right here under accessibility, go to touch, and you will have here back tap. A lot of people enable this and then just forgot about it, maybe don't use it at all. So make sure you go here, check these. If you don't have here anything enabled that you actually need or use, make sure to turn these off. Another feature under accessibility, pretty cool, voice control. It allows you to control anything on your iPhone using your voice. But if you don't actually use this feature, you don't really need it, make sure you have it turned off. Or if you enable it, make sure that it's all on automatic. So of course, every time you use it, it will turn on and then it will turn off automatically. So you will have this right here, attention aware. Make sure you have this enabled, so when you're not looking at your phone, it will turn off automatically, and once you're looking at your phone, it actually turns on automatically. Here we have another one under accessibility, it's sound recognition. Now sound recognition will basically be listening for any of the sounds that you select, and then it will notify you if it hears one of those sounds. Well, this is a pretty cool feature. It might be useful in a lot of cases. Some people might need this, but probably most people won't even need this feature or don't even use it. So maybe you just have turned it on to try it out or something, but just make sure you go ahead and turn it off if you're not using it. Any feature that requires your iPhone being aware of stuff will consume a ton of battery, like this one right here. It will be all the time listening for these sounds right here, so make sure you go ahead and turn it off if you don't actually need it. Moving on to privacy, location services is probably one of the top 3 battery drainers on the iPhone. So we will have like brightness, notifications, and then of course location services. This requires a ton of battery. What I suggest you do is always make sure that you check your apps and see which of the apps have actually your location. So there are a lot of apps that you might not want to have your locations, of course, for privacy concerns, but battery as well. So if you have apps that are constantly tracking your location, they will know your location, but also consume a ton of your battery. So what I suggest you do, make sure you go ahead, check the list of the apps right here and turn off all the apps that you don't actually need. Or if you don't really use location services that much, do what I do and completely turn it off. Another thing that uses a lot of battery is system services. Under system services, you will have a few things here that are actually consuming battery, but you don't really need. Things like right here, compass calibration, or maybe something like right here, setting a time zone, things like these. Now, of course, a Find My, very important, make sure to always have that turned on, but there are a lot of stuff here that actually You can see motion calibration, distance, and things like that. These actually don't really have that much importance for you, so make sure you go ahead and turn as much as these off on your iPhone. We're still under privacy here, and we're going to Bluetooth. Now Bluetooth right here under privacy shows the apps which have access to the Bluetooth on your iPhone. This of course consumes a ton of battery. These apps will be using the Bluetooth, which is a component of your iPhone that requires quite a lot of battery life. So if you find here apps that you don't actually need to have access to your Bluetooth, make sure you have them turned off. Now when it comes to Bluetooth, one thing that I suggest you do is keep it off most of the time. A lot of the times you don't actually need it, but most people will have Bluetooth turned on all the time. I do myself, I rarely turn it off, but it actually consumes a ton of battery because it's always scanning and always working in the background. So if you want to do this, if you want to turn it off, make sure you have done that through the settings app, because if you just disable it from the control center, it will enable automatically because it's not turned off, it's just temporarily disabled. Next up, we're moving to mail. Head on to the mail settings and go to your accounts. Now right here you will have fetch new data. Make sure you have push disabled, and then just use here manually or hourly. This is the fetch method, which will just save you a ton of battery. This is really important. Notifications on mail, actually mail fetching is really important. Now what you can also do if you just don't want to have the same settings enabled for all of your accounts, you will have here a list of your accounts, so you can do this manually for any of your email accounts. So just go ahead and pick them here, or just do it from here for all of your emails. As I said earlier on the video, notifications are really important when it comes to battery life. So make sure you manage them the right way. Having a lot of notifications from a lot of apps always coming in and always turning on actually the screen of your device will just drain the battery out of your iPhone. So make sure you go ahead and go to notifications, and make sure you set up your scheduled summary. This is an amazing iOS feature which will let you still get the notifications, but again still save a ton of battery because it will just bring you notifications at a certain point of the day. So you go to scheduled summary and pick here your scheduled summary, of course the time when you want to receive the notifications. So you can go ahead and set up as many as you want, and then of course all those notifications will just come at the same time on the scheduled summary. Of course, if you have apps that are really important, you can have notifications turned on, actually immediate notifications, but not for all of your apps. For the next tip, we're moving back under accessibility, and right here find Siri and make sure you have disabled always listen for hey, you know the rest. So this is really important. Having this feature turned on all the time will just keep your iPhone aware of you saying that word, and of course will consume a ton of CPU power and battery as well. So if you don't actually need this and you don't use it a lot, make sure you have it disabled. And we're moving back under privacy and security, and right here you will have motion and fitness. Now these are the apps that are tracking your movement. That of course requires a ton of battery. So right here you can see I only have 2 apps enabled that are tracking my motion and fitness. So if you have a long list here, that will actually be a problem. So make sure you filter that list and turn off apps that you don't actually need. Of course, really important, background app refresh as well. Go to general, right here background app refresh, and you will have a list of all of your apps. Now right there at the top, you can choose Wi-Fi and cellular data or only Wi-Fi, so the apps will refresh in the background only when you're connected to Wi-Fi. I wouldn't suggest turning it off completely because of course you have apps that you need to be updated in the background. But one thing you can do, make sure you go ahead and take a look at this list right here and disable the ones that are really not that important and you don't need to be refreshing in the background all the time. Now, as I talked earlier when we talked about the new haptic feedback on the keyboard, vibration will consume a ton of battery. So what I would suggest you do is make sure that you turn it off. You can do it from here, sounds and haptics. If you go here, you will have play haptics on ring mode and play haptics in silent. Now you can enable this so you will have haptics only when your iPhone is on silent, when you're on ring mode, you don't actually need to have haptics. Now, of course, your iPhone won't just have vibration for your ringer and for your notifications. It will have vibration pretty much everywhere. If those are not that important to you, you can turn them off completely. You can do that by going under accessibility, go to touch, you will have here vibration. This will completely turn off the vibration engine of your device. Next up is brightness. A lot of people think that having brightness on manual is better for the battery of your iPhone. It's actually not. What I would suggest you do to have better battery life on your iPhone is always make sure that you have the brightness set on automatic. If you don't know that, just go right here under accessibility, then go to display and text size and make sure you have auto brightness turned on. Next up, we're talking about Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi will consume way less battery than cellular data. So a lot of people will have nowadays unlimited plans of data, so they don't actually worry about switching to Wi-Fi at all. They will just keep their data going on all the time. That will reduce the battery life of your iPhone a lot. So make sure you turn off cellular data when you have a Wi-Fi connection, especially if you know you're going to be at home or at a place for a longer time. Make sure you have cellular data turned off and use Wi-Fi as much as possible. Next up, use airplane mode whenever possible, especially when you're on places that have like bad coverage. Places that have bad coverage will just drain the battery out of your iPhone, because your iPhone is trying to connect all the time, probably not being successful at that, so it will just drain the battery out of your iPhone. So if you're seeing that your iPhone has a very low signal and you're not getting the coverage you want, just make sure to turn on airplane mode. And last but not least, try to use low power mode as much as you can. Now, I know when on low power mode, your iPhone won't be able to do certain things, and of course the performance and all that will drop a bit, but if you're not doing anything too heavy on your iPhone, make sure to turn on low power mode. It actually helps out a lot. So that's pretty much it for this video, guys. Thank you for watching. These are more than 30 tips and tricks on how to improve battery life on your iPhone running iOS 16. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Leave a like if you did. Don't forget to subscribe for more. I'll see you on the next one.